Es un privilegio para la comunidad educativa de la Universidad La Salle contar con la participación del hermano Robert Schieler, superior general del Instituto de los Hermanos de las Escuelas Cristianas, en el 18º Encuentro de Formación Docente, con la temática Impacto de las Universidades lasallistas en el Mundo, el docente como transformador social. Solicito al hermano Robert Schieler y a la doctora Joan Landeros sean tan amables de subir al escenario. Muchas gracias. El hermano Robert Schieler dicta la conferencia magistral intitulada Tres piedras angulares de la identidad y la doctora Joan Landeros los acompaña como moderadora.
Good morning, everyone. There is simultaneous translation for those of you that would like to listen to the presentation of Brother Superior in Spanish. It is a pleasure for me to make this introduction to a great Lasallian leader, but also a dear friend. Robert Schieler was born April 28, 1950, in Philadelphia, in the United States. He took his habit in 1968 and his final profession in 1979. Brother Robert has a master's degree in European history from the University of Notre Dame, South Bend, and earned a doctoral degree in educational administration from the University of Pennsylvania in 1988. He taught in the United States from 1975 to 1988, and for the following 13 years was a missionary in the Philippines. He has occupied several administrative positions as Assistant Provincial for the Baltimore Province from 1991 to 1998, Director of Education for the United States Toronto region from 98 to 2001, Provincial of the Baltimore Province from 2001 to 2007, and from 2007 to 2014 he was the General Counselor for the Lasallian region of Relan, residing in Washington. Brother Robert has several publications, the last one entitled Set Out in Haste, Association for the Lasallian Mission. This was a pastoral letter written in December of 2017. He's on the board, he has been on the board of the academic committee, LaSalle University, Philadelphia, St. Mary's University, Winona, and Bethlehem University, Palestine. He has been a delegate to the four general chapters. He participated as a member of the ad hoc commission on the rule for the Brothers of the Christian Schools from 2004 to 2005. He has been distinguished with a number of honorary doctorates, including a doctorate in education from St. Mary's College of Moraga, California, doctorate of humanities from Christian Brothers University, Memphis, Tennessee, doctorate in educational leadership from LaSalle University, Philadelphia, a doctorate of humanities from Lewis University, a doctorate in human letters from Manhattan College, and a doctorate in pedagogy from De La Salle University, Manila. Brother Robert was inducted into the West Philadelphia Catholic High School Hall of Fame, and recently in 2017 was distinguished as a Knight of the Holy Sepulchre in Vatican City. 2014, the Institute of the Brothers of the Christian Schools, during the 45th General Chapter, elected Brother Robert Schieler as their Superior General for the period 2014-2021. He is the 27th successor of St. John Baptist de La Salle. Brother Robert is now leading the largest order of religious brothers in the Catholic Church dedicated to education, the Lasallian world. Please give him a round of applause. I would like to present Brother Robert Schieler.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Joan, for that introduction. I think the real test of any of those awards mean anything is if I will be able to use the technology for my PowerPoint. The second test is if I can find my remarks. I am very happy to be here with you today. This is one of the joys of being superior, to be able to come around and look at the great works that you are doing in our Lasallian institutions. I often remind people that 98% of the teachers, educators, professors in our schools are you, lay women and men. So for me, what's most important today is that I can come personally and say thank you for what you do every day. That's for me my most important message today. I will try to speak slow for the translators. I hope my English isn't too bad. And if I speak too quickly, just knock on the window and tell me to slow up. Okay? So here we go. I've been invited to speak to you about the global impact of Lasallian universities, the challenges confronting them, and the teacher's role in social transformation. I am certain that much of what I say will not be new to you, because you do it every day. But I hope some of my remarks will be helpful for your own reflections. So let me begin with a brief comment on the topic of social transformation. More than 10 years ago, one of your peers noted that we must ask ourselves if the studies we carry out are truly able to contribute to the social and productive transformation of our peoples, to help solve the problems of hunger, food production, environmental sustainability, and if they offer new economic proposals fostering association and solidarity as an alternative to the chaos created by neoliberal models that fell into a crisis in 2008, and all the world was affected by it. The task of transformation is formidable, and one must never minimize its challenges. However, committed individuals, in collaboration with other like-minded people, I believe, can be change agents. Two examples from our Lasallian world are illustrative. The rise of Lasallian universities in the 19th century in the United States, and the emergence of Lasallian universities in the 1960s here in Mexico. Universidad de La Salle, Ciudad de Mexico, en Universidad de La Salle, Bajío, in León. In the United States, LaSallian universities began by serving the sons of Catholic immigrants so that they could secure employment and a place in society. During the second half of the 20th century, LaSallian universities in Mexico met the increasing demand by low and middle income families. More specifically, as an example of a transformative role, the Universidades La Salle, Chihuahua, and Noreste today are responding to the educational aspirations of indigenous peoples, and upon graduation, the students commit to implementing projects for the benefit of a particular community. However, we know that in our hemisphere, there exists the persistent scourge of injustice, the unbroken cycle of poverty for many of our people, the devastation of indigenous peoples and their cultures, and ingrained political corruption. This challenges communities of higher education to be agents of change. No one can do it alone. Collaboration with other organizations such as the church, like-minded NGOs, private investors, and business community is essential. Through collaboration with the church, civil authorities, and benefactors, the educational model inspired by John Baptist de La Salle became, over time, a socially transformative institution. He left as his legacy a new type of school system for the elementary education of the poor, a new set of standards that would transform teaching school to a profession and a vocation, a new community of consecrated lay teachers as a new form of religious life in the church. John Baptist de La Salle and his first brothers challenged the educational status quo. Together, they helped set in motion the advent of an educated working class that in turn challenged the social status quo. Hands more suited for the plow were being taught to hold the pen. We know that transformation rarely happens in a linear or evolutionary trajectory. Rather, fundamental changes are disruptive and at times revolutionary. This has been the case for nations, societies, and the church. For example, we can cite the birth of new religious congregations such as the Brothers of the Christian Schools. What we assume to be moments marking the natural evolution of ministerial forms were more often than not deeply contested innovations. What in retrospect appears as development was at the time experienced as disruption. For a moment, I just ask you to turn to the person next to you. And in our postmodern world, is the university experiencing a disruptive model period today? Are there many challenges confronting us, opportunities for transformation? And what is our role today as a university? You can just turn to the person next to you for a minute to discuss that. And that gives me a break to drink some water. Okay, if I can bring you back.
Okay.
I'm sure there'll be other occasions to continue the discussion.
Seguro habrá otras ocasiones para continuar esta discusión.
According to the UNESCO report prepared in 2009, World Conference on Higher Education, tertiary education is being influenced by 5 main factors, which I'm sure are familiar to you. The impact of globalization, the phenomenon of massification, increasing inequality access, increasing student mobility, and information and communication technology. Obviously, each one of these 5 factors could be topics of a dissertation or a week-long workshop. Also, each of the factors, it seems to me, is the object of a particular field of study. In addition, a consideration of the factors would necessarily be conditioned by our own cultural experiences and perspective. So were we to spend time mulling over the challenges confronting education at the university level, should we speak as an Asian or a Pacific Islander, European, as a French or English-speaking African, as a Latin American, or a Franco-American or Anglo-American? And then we would have to determine if we are to approach the topic from the female or male perspective, from the viewpoint of the precariously poor or of the socially secure. I confess that it is beyond my competence to address such issues in depth. So rather than giving you a clear recipe for effectively impacting the lives of your students and your immediate social environment, I will offer you some ingredients that I hope will contribute to your own recipe. I recently completed my pastoral visit to Europe and the Middle East. Time spent with brothers, LaSallian women and men like you, and students in Poland, Italy, Malta, Lebanon, England, Egypt, Turkey, just to name a few of the many countries I visited. And it reminds me of the cultural complexity of our world and our institute. Let us look, for example, at the practical implications involved in creatively and effectively responding to the impact of information and communication technology. La Salle University in Barcelona, where I presume just about everyone has 24/7 access to some sort of technology, will certainly respond in a way that would be neither possible nor practical at our LaSallian Center in Abidjan, Ivory Coast, West Africa, where access is sporadic and not universally accessible. I hope you can see where I'm going with this. To me, it is clear that each LaSallian higher educational community is challenged to address the impact of globalization, massification, unequal access, student mobility, and information and communication technology on its own. There is no one size that fits all response. There is no universally acceptable and applicable LaSallian solution. University, La Salle, Mexico City, De La Salle University in Manila, Ethiopia Catholic University, La Salle in Addis, each will have their own recipe. A matter of particular concern for us, however, is not listed in the UNESCO report I quoted earlier. The issue I refer to transcends borders, describes our reason for being, and influences our responses to the multiple challenges facing us and 21st century tertiary education. So this morning, I would like to offer for your reflection and conversation some food for thought about the Catholic and LaSallian identity of our educational communities, a clear understanding of our shared corporate identity will inspire your strategic plans to address the impact of the factors confronting higher education. One of our particular challenges is to clarify and proclaim our distinctive identity. Many of our universities prepare young men and women to educate in Catholic schools. Our factors influencing higher education also pressure a postmodernity impacting primary and secondary Catholic education. International research shows that the curricula of Catholic secondary schools are increasingly becoming dominated by the pressure of conforming to the requirements of the nation state. These requirements are generally expressed in economic and utilitarian terms and evaluated by criteria of measurable outputs. As a result of these pressures, Catholic secondary schools are in danger of losing their distinctive religious and educational cultural programs expressed in a distinctive Catholic school curriculum. Similarly, another author suggests that higher education in general is losing its purpose, the education of the whole person through the humanities. She notes, there is pressure on universities now to change fundamentally, to equip our young to what the Fabians used to call brain workers. They are to be skilled labor in the new economy, intellectually nimble, enough to meet its needs, which we know will change constantly and unpredictably. Society, she opines, wants the young to be useful, to promote competitive adequacy at a national level, to whose profit or benefit we are never told. Are we being pressured to educate or train young people to be laborers? Or are we holistically forming individuals? Is our choice limited to providing a practical education, or is our goal to offer a liberating education? Historically, I believe LaSallian higher education has been able to hold this tension in a healthy balance. But my focus today is not that debate. I would like to reflect with you about an issue that is at the heart of Catholic LaSallian tertiary education. Jesus Christ is the reason for being of LaSallian education. And this affirmation obviously impacts our educational philosophy, our pedagogical style, and our strategic plans for the human and Christian formation of young people and adults. This is why we believe that education is cooperation with God's plan of salvation. We strive to procure the well-being of our students, the image and likeness of God, especially those who are economically poor and marginalized. The centers of higher education that you represent are important members of the worldwide LaSallian family, where every day 1 million students, 90,000 dedicated partners, and 3,600 brothers are committed to education in 79 countries, where you and we share the joy of the gospel, solidarity, respect, mercy, and justice. All this in a first-class educational environment. Approximately 200,000 of the 1 million students enrolled in our schools are in communities of tertiary education. Almost 1/5
casi un quinto
of our total
del
student
total
population,
de nuestra población
something
estudiantil.
unheard of when Brother
Algo que
Rodolfo
no
was
se
a young
escucha
brother
cuando-
starting
no se
out,
escuchaba cuando el
where
hermano
most of our
Rodolfo era un
schools were
joven,
primary and
en donde la
secondary.
mayoría de nuestras escuelas solo eran primarias y secundarias.
So what does it mean to be Catholic and
Entonces, ¿qué
Lasallian?
significa ser católico
What
y
are the
lasallista?
descriptive markers
¿Qué son
that
los
should be
marcadores
perceptible in our
descriptivos que
universities in
deberían ser
Philadelphia,
perceptibles en las
in
universidades
Paris,
de
in
Filadelfia,
Palmas?
París, Palmas?
What are the attitudes and behaviors
¿Cuáles
that
son
will
las
be
actitudes y
experienced in our
comportamientos
universities
que
in
se van a
Beauvais, France, in Bogota,
experimentar en
and
Bo-
Bacolod,
en Bogotá,
Philippines?
Bacol o Beauvais?
In other words,
De otras palabras,
how do we express
¿cómo
our unity in the
expresamos
richness of our
nuestra
diversity?
unidad en la riqueza de nuestra
Certainly,
diversidad?
Relau and your district have
Ciertamente,
criteria for
Real y
assessing the
Instituto
Catholic and Lasallian
tienen los
identity of your
criterios de
educational communities.
estas, identidad
Today,
de las
I would
comunidades
like to
lasallistas.
highlight just
Hoy
3
quisiera resaltar
touchstones that
tres
I believe are
marcadores
essential to
que creo que son
contemporary and relevant
esenciales
Lasallian centers of
para
higher
los centros
education.
lasallistas contemporáneos y relevantes
And as I
de
visit the
nuestra
Lasallian
sociedad.
world, it
Cuando
becomes
visito el mundo
increasingly clear to
lasallista,
me
se hace
that
cada
these
vez más
3
claro
principles
que
should be
esos
among
tres
the other
principios
characteristics
tienen que estar junto
that
con
you
otras
use to describe your
características que ustedes
particular
describen
center.
para describir su centro en
Before
particular.
doing so, however,
Antes de
turning to these
empezar
touchstones,
de
I
hablar
again
de los
invite you
marcadores, los invito
to
de
turn to the
nuevo
person next to
a
you.
hablar con la persona que
Are
está
the
al lado de
5 factors we
ustedes.
mentioned
Y si
part of
estos
your
5
reality today
factores
here at
que
LaSalle?
mencionamos ahorita
And what has been your conversation
son
about Catholic
importantes
and
para su
Lasallian
realidad? ¿Y
identity
cuál
here?
¿Cuál ha sido su
1 minute.
conversación sobre su
Okay?
identidad católica
And
y
I'll take another
lasallista?
drink of water.
Les doy un minuto y yo tomaré
And you
otro
can
poco de
discuss
agua.
Mexico's victory over Japan
Y
at another time, at
pueden
Germany at another
discutir la
time.
victoria de México sobre Alemania en otro momento.
Okay, if we can come back. Translators, is it okay? Am I okay? Thank you. The first touchstone is the presence of God,
la presencia de Dios,
a conscious awareness
la
of the
percepción
presence
consciente
of
de la
God.
presencia de Dios.
I believe that's the central dynamic of Catholic and Lasallian identity. My visits to the four corners of the world assure me that I can affirm that our Lasallian world is religiously pluralistic. In some Western cultures, an increasing number of people, young people, do not identify with a particular religious practice. However, I, and I'm sure you, increasingly hear them say that though they believe, they do not belong. Whereas in African and Asian societies, the overwhelming majority of the people say that they believe and they belong. Our universities and other centers of tertiary education should provide ample and non-threatening opportunities to reflect on the ultimate meaning of life and the common good. Brother Luke Somm, a past professor of theology at Manhattan College, wrote, "For many young people today, the university is their last chance formally to address the major questions concerning the meaning of their existence, to recognize the seeds of destruction in society and in themselves, to become aware of the major inequalities in social and political life, and to anticipate the futility of a life centered on pleasure, wealth, and power." With poet Jared Manley Hopkins, we should inspire our students to delight in the grandeur of God revealed through creation. We should develop experiences designed to show the students that to protect creation, to protect every man and every woman, to look upon them with tenderness and love, is to open up a horizon of hope. It is to let a shaft of light break through that heavy cloud. It is to bring warmth of hope to them. Enlightened by Celtic spirituality, we can lead our students to become spiritually sensitive and to appreciate interbeing. In the Celtic Christian world, heaven and earth are not divided. Spirit and matter are woven together inseparably. The life of one species and the life of another are never torn apart. The well-being of humanity is viewed in relationship to the well-being of the rest of Earth's species. In God is Back, authors Micklethwait and Woodridge, commenting on the prevalent, although sometimes hidden, world of faith, remind us that we live in a world where fanatics strap on suicide belts and blow themselves to smithereens in the name of God. Our centers of higher education can invite Lasallians to strap on backpacks and joyfully serve Syrian refugees in the name of God at the Fratelli Project in Lebanon, or teach children in the name of God in South Sudan. A conscious and pervasive awareness of God's presence in Lasallian universities creates oases of hope, sites of enjoyment, environments of academic success, and spaces of creativity. An extraordinary example of this is found at Bethlehem University, the Lasallian University in Palestine. The tangible sense of God's presence felt on the campus in Bethlehem springs from our conviction that all persons, no exceptions, are the image and likeness of God. This fundamental Christian belief calls us to reflect and to act. It is indeed sobering to recall that both those we like and those we despise, for whatever reason, are inherently equal. So as we reflect on our Lasallian Catholic identity, that which unites us in universities in Araneta, Angers, and other parts of the global world, it will not do to spend energy on what is peripheral and unessential, as if it were high summer. To survive, people of faith need to return to the center, to the inmost core that alone can nourish and warm the heart in winter. In this situation, there is only one big issue, and that is the question of God. Our shared assurance that we encounter God in all whom we meet, both those next to us and those who come to us virtually, has a demonstrative effect on the way LaSallians relate, teach, learn, and research and administer. The deeply held conviction that each and every person is created in the image and likeness of God in all whom we meet is at the heart of Catholic anthropology and is, therefore, an essential mark of LaSallian education. Referring to the new modes of virtual presence as a means of personal encounter, I note that perhaps the most positive educational implication of all this for the Catholic educator is the capacity of the new digital media to create new communities by responding to the human need for relationship and participation. It is because of our belief that all are welcome in LaSallian universities and centers of tertiary education, Christian, Orthodox, Muslims, Jews, Hindus, Buddhists, animists, agnostics, atheists, and the simply indifferent are invited to reflect with us on the ultimate meaning of life and engage in our search for truth. Experiencing others as mediators of God's presence influences the way we treat people, and as a consequence, determines strategies to promote the fullness of life for everyone. In this regard, the perspective of women must be taken into account and must be highlighted. This is important not only because the majority of our students are women, but also because women by nature and endowed by God to be covenant with life, bearers and fosterers of life. The perspective of the poor, the view from the other side, must also be considered when we question admission criteria, financial policies, and academic guidelines. This is a sine qua non of Jesus' project for the reign of God and an integral component of being LaSallian. In responding to a young man's question asking why the poor across the river can't lift themselves up as his family had done, he was answered this way: which side of the river are you standing on as you ask your questions? Can you see that there are just as many unanswerable questions that you can ask from the other side of the river? Mind you, they are very different questions. They are questions which can help us to transform our social reality and empower those on the other side of the river. The second touchstone, creators of community. Our deeply held belief inspires us to act. In our LaSallian context, this means that we are proactively and explicitly creators of educational communities, characterized by inclusivity, respect, dialogue, and accompaniment. We speak about both of us and all of us together. We put the other, especially those most in need, in the spotlight. Think for a moment how this colors the teaching-learning dynamic. Consider how this influences our research goals. A practical result of our Catholic and LaSallian identity should produce an experience of concordance with one heart, one commitment, and one life, dedicated to our mission of human and Christian education. We work for the well-being of our students and colleagues, and we strive to make the common good indeed common, and not just a benefit for some. That's a little bit ahead. I'll go back. In Lasallian educational communities, there are no voiceless members. Students, support staff, gardeners, janitors, cooks, administrators, professors, governors, all contribute to the symphony. We recognize that humanity's song is not played by a single flute or violin, but one played by the orchestra, with the combined chords of all the peoples of the world. Our educational programs contribute to the integral formation of each person and their relationship to others. One's identity is not a solitary possession discovered through mental introversion, through disengagement from the webs of relationships, me thinking about myself. It is given by membership of one's community, the family, the clan, the tribe, the nation. This insight from African culture invites us to see that membership in a Lasallian university community also contributes to one's identity, sense of worth, happiness, and interrelatedness with all of humanity. Our conscious awareness of the presence of God and our appreciation of every person's inherent dignity imbues us with an attitude of solidarity and impels us to practical actions that contribute to the common good. We are disciples of Jesus Christ and John Baptist de La Salle, two attractive and provocative personalities who move us to procure the well-being of all those entrusted to our care. Jesus, with his project for the reign of God, and John Baptist de La Salle, the introduction of the project into the world of education, were men moved to concrete and practical actions to the benefit of others and to put them on center stage. Their activity was preferentially, though not exclusively, directed to the poor. The risen Christ proclaims the victory and of God's justice over our injustice, victory over all that oppresses and kills the human body and the human spirit. The risen Christ puts newness and meaning where we put destruction, and brings life wherever we generate death and every form of death. The violent death of war, the slow martyrdom of the marginalized, the relentless genocide of peoples and ethnic groups, the inexorable annihilation that is the result of hunger and destitution, the destructive humiliation of torture, and the systematic violence of nature. John Baptist de La Salle, deeply moved by his relationship with Jesus Christ and the human and spiritual distress of the children of artisans and of the poor, made a lifelong commitment to God to provide these children with a transformative human and Christian education. He reformed education to make it accessible to the poor and to offer it to all as a sign of the reign of God. Inspired by Jesus Christ and John Baptist de La Salle, the third touchstone of contemporary Catholic and Lasallian education is service, intended to alleviate anxieties and basic necessities of the poor and marginalized. The worldwide Lasallian Days of Peace, for example, unite all of us through concrete actions of solidarity with vulnerable and socially, politically voiceless people. Lasallian professors are united in their desire to develop curricula that awaken students to the root causes of social inequality. Campus ministers provide opportunities for members of the community to meet poor people and experience their plight. Researchers seek to discover concrete ways to revolutionize current socioeconomic realities and to effectively care for the environment so that all have the opportunity to live life to the fullest. LaSalle universities and centers of tertiary education must be united to ensure that vulnerable groups such as the economically poor, the academically challenged, migrants, refugees, and indigenous peoples are invited to full membership in our schools and provided with the skills that will enable them to be full participants in our quest for a more merciful and compassionate world. This is a call for transformative action. So I believe tasks of higher education today include education for political participation and commitment. Politics are in urgent need of fresh air, of a new generation of politicians that really care for the well-being of the people. Education to engage in meaningful social discussions regarding ethics, environmental protection, health, and nutrition. Education for the proper use of technology, attentive to the potential of manipulation of social media for fake news, partial truths, and opinions masquerading as facts. Recognition of Jesus Christ as the reason for being of our educational communities and our shared conscious awareness of the presence of God instill in us a heartfelt appreciation for the innate dignity of every human person. Consequently, we create welcoming and inclusive communities where all have a voice. The hope-inspiring mystery of the life, death, and resurrection of Jesus Christ and the witness of John Baptist de La Salle inspire us to concretely respond to the basic necessities of the poor. With Christian anthropology and LaSallian insights at the heart of our teaching and research, we come together as academic communities to seek wisdom, to discover truth, and to contribute to the common good. Awareness of the presence of God, the creation of communities, and service to benefit others are ingredients for committed individuals to be agents of change for social transformation. Sharing the Catholic and LaSallian identity transcends borders, keeps us focused on the common mission of human and Christian education. It is the utmost importance that we frequently return to those who inspire and motivate us, Jesus Christ and John Baptist de La Salle. In this regard, I would like to bring to your attention the 2019 Year of LaSallian Vocations. This gives us an opportunity to encourage young men to consider becoming brothers and to invite our partners to deepen their understanding of Catholic and LaSallian identity. We can also use the occasion to remind Christian colleagues that Catholic education is a vector of evangelization by means of its mission to offer a worthwhile and broad educational experience to all, regardless of faith tradition. I began and end with UNESCO's description of the 5 main factors influencing tertiary education, which calls all LaSallian communities to reflection, conversation, and strategic planning. Our shared Catholic and LaSallian identity will significantly nuance and enrich our local strategic responses to the impact of these 5 factors. I appreciate your listening. I appreciate you staying awake. I'm very happy to be here. Thank you very much.
Agradecemos las valiosas palabras del hermano Schieler y le brindamos otro fuerte aplauso, por favor.
Brother Schieler, please give him a big applause.